Obscure games are usually the first ones to go up in price in the market, even modern releases. Nowadays, 9 out of 10 obscure JRPGs are either expensive or hard to find. Today though, I'd like to show you some that are still cheap and that I personally recommend, so let's begin! Number 10. Tokiden Kiwami. This is an action RPG inspired by the likes of God Eater and Monster Hunter, but it's more story-driven than the latter. Developed by Omega Force, inspired by the Shinto religion, demons known as the Oni have invaded the lands, so your customizable character joins a legion of slayers, known as the Mononofu, to fight them off. You'll be regularly sent to missions with a few allies to kill monsters. This is an Omega Force game, so you can expect the combat to be great, with satisfying controls and action. Bosses are epic here, there's always a method to take them down, having you rely on more than your skills. It truly is a game that stands out for its boss fights, hence the Monster Hunter influence. You also have your main city, which is your base of operations with all the shops and NPC dialogue, of course. Now, it's important to mention that this version, Kiwami, is an enhanced edition of a game subtitled as The Age of Demons, which is the original. There is a physical version of it on the PS Vita, but not on the PS4. Kiwami, though, has one on both systems. PAL and NTSC versions of the PS4 release can be found for laughable prices between $10 and $20. The Vita version is obviously a little bit more expensive than that. Number 9. Grand Kingdom. Another game that came out on both PS4 and PS Vita is Grand Kingdom. This is a strategy RPG like no other, one where you play as a commander of a group of mercenaries. You've got your assistants through whom the story is mostly told about a war between several kingdoms and clans, but they aren't playable. You can hire generic mercenaries with a specific job to join your cause. However, you can only take 4 of them with you for every mission. They take place in these large maps, traversing as in a roguelike RPG, represented by chess-looking pieces. You know, you move and they move too. Contact means you enter this battle where you can position your characters in 2D layers to attack your enemies in turn-based combat. It's strategic and challenging, but everything revolves mostly on the positioning I mentioned. Just keep in mind, this game is a huge grindfest and you'll be revisiting areas just to level up. According to websites like eBay or Price Charting, copies of this version can be found for $10 or $20 used. There are limited editions of it which are also quite affordable. I recommend spending a few more bucks to get one instead if you find it for a good price. Number 8. The Witch and the 100th Night. Swamp Witch Metalia wants to own all the swamps and areas around it, but her rival is getting in the way, so she summons the legendary 100th Knight, this chibi and useless looking character, to fight her. Of course, she'll also manipulate him so he can invade villages and submit them to her will. You will only control the little knight here. As he gets stronger, the more missions he completes. He can equip up to 5 different weapons, switch to them at any time and create different combos. Combat here is pretty good. There's also a hunger system. The knight needs gigacalories to function apart from his regular HP. To counter this, you can devour enemies or consume some items. The story and visuals don't come second though, as they're just as delightful. Metalia is such a fun character anyway and very incorrect. The reason why this action RPG is cheap is because it got a remaster on the PS4. The PAL release is dirt cheap too, but the North American one, well, it can go up for 40 or 50 depending on your region. I don't see the problem in collecting the PS3 original version and sticking to it. Number 7. Ragnarok Odyssey Ace. Similar to Tokiden, this is also a quest-driven game where you hunt down big monsters, and also similar to it, this version is also an enhanced port of the original. It can be found on both PS3 and PS Vita for decent prices. Yes, even the Vita version is kind of affordable. Combining fantasy and science fiction, you explore a world with monsters that need to be put down. You belong to a guild that specializes in just that. Hard to believe, but this was developed by Game Arts, the guys behind the Grandia and the Lunar series, but it's very different in terms of storytelling and obviously in gameplay. Controls are nice, they haven't aged, or at least not depending on the class you choose for your character. Also, it focuses way more on that very same class system instead of a leveling system, which is unusual for a Monster Hunter clone. At least there's a lot of armor upgrades done with cards you buy or acquire by defeating enemies. This Ace version includes all the DLC, new enemies, dungeons, skills, and thankfully a rebalanced difficulty, cause the original was weird. I hope you find either the PS3 or Vita version for a reasonable price. It shouldn't cost you more than $30 in some countries. Number 6. Glory of Heracles. Not many talk about this game, which is part of a series that never came out of Japan. This is the only one that's ever been localized. Obviously it's based on the Greek mythology, but the gameplay is very traditional, as in your main character hooks up with a sexy girl and together start a journey going from town to town and an overworld in between, you know the drill. More characters will join you on your quest, but the star of this game is the combat. It's played in turns, but you need to use the stylus and either draw or click on the symbols in the lower screen to execute magic attacks. At first I thought it would be a chore, but it wasn't, and it turned out to be quite fun. It gets rid of what could otherwise be a monotonous battle system. I also think it's balanced, one of those that get harder the more you advance, though you might encounter a few spikes here and there. It's a really good game. Now, most Nintendo DS JRPGs are already expensive, pricey, or hard to find. This one is one of the very few that are still affordable and can be found for dirt cheap. Definitely pick it up if you see it. Number 5. Tokyosan EX+. This is yet another game that's also on PS4 and Vita, including a Steam release. Standard PS4 version is actually an enhanced port of the original PS Vita game, so yeah, this is the one to go for. A bunch of students join together as a secret organization that fights demons inside portals. Portals that are connected to human emotions and their dark pasts. Story, while generic in some areas, keeps you interested enough to continue. It also has some small Persona-like elements, such as a dating simulator, but it's not as deep. Anyway, this is an action RPG developed by Falcom, so the combat is ridiculously good, with responsive controls and quick-paced action. You go into the portals to complete stages with puzzles, monsters, and a boss waiting at the end. Only 3 characters can be taken with you, but only 1 can be controlled at a time. You can switch to any of them at any given time though, and like in the East games with party members, each character is strong against certain types of enemies. The game's quite challenging, so consider yourself warned, and it includes an extra character with full episodes and missions revolving around them. Strangely enough, the North American version is the cheap one here. PAL versions go for $60 or more, what the hell? Thank goodness the PS4 is region free, so you can just stick with the NTSC release if you want to. Number 4. Astria Ascending. This is an indie RPG I covered recently in this other video, so I'll be quick. It's an excellent turn-based RPG that revolves around exploiting enemy weaknesses to succeed. It's infamous for being brutal and extremely grindy, but thankfully there's an easy mode, which actually feels like the real normal mode. Beautiful art, graphics, the visual department didn't disappoint, music by Hitoshi Sakimoto and script by Kazushige Nojima, 2 Final Fantasy veterans. It isn't very story focused, so forget about reading tons of dialogue here, but the plot is interesting about a group of demigods suppressing rebellions and fighting demons known as the Noise. Like I said, combat is turn-based and it's really addictive, especially since there are multiple jobs you can learn and equip as the story progresses. There are also a couple of these shoot-'em-up stages which are actually fun. This game is available on all modern systems, and every single version goes nowadays for about $20 to $30, like most RPGs in this list. It's definitely worth picking up. Number 3. Sakuna of Rise and Ruin. Being a game published by Exit Games, I thought its price would never go down, but it did, and it's been very affordable, this year at least. A 2D action RPG about the whimsical goddess Sakuna who gets sent to an island with a bunch of humans who are also being punished. With her doing all the fighting to clean out the demons, the goal is to also produce rice to send it back to heaven. The farming might put you off if you're like me and don't like Harvest Moon, but this is more like Rune Factory. However, with far less focus on it. The minigames dedicated to making the rice and taking care of it are surprisingly addictive, despite feeling somewhat tedious at times. It's a 2D action RPG where you play as Sakuna. She's chaotic and hard to control, but the action is very fun, with satisfying combat. She has a variety of moves with 2 different weapons and her stash, also used to climb around areas to reach important places. Boss fights are a total blast here, definitely the best part of the game, and it's quite challenging, which only adds more to the fun. Both Switch and PS4 versions can be easily found on different websites for $20 or $30. This is highly recommended, so buy it if you see it for that price, or be patient like me until its collector's edition drops a bit more than $50 or $60. Number 2, Sinki Zero Last Beginning. This is about a group of total strangers who wake up one day in an abandoned island, convinced the world has ended. Even more strange is the fact that they seem to age quickly and die within only 2 weeks, but they can be reborn by using score points in this arcade machine. In fact, the whole point of the game is to find the machine's parts to make it function at 100% and maybe solve the mysteries of the plot. It's very story driven, but it can get really dark. Each chapter focuses on one character's psychological traumas and dark past to make them confront them. You play as one of them per chapter in first person. That's right, this is a dungeon crawler, and I'm not usually a fan of those, but this is a great exception. You can also use materials to build workshops or bedrooms in your base. Labyrinths are full of simple puzzles as you explore around, finding clues or the next area, but fighting isn't done in turns. You see the enemies around moving in 4 directions only, just like you, but unlike in roguelike RPGs, where you move and they move, here it's different. They move all the time, and you fight in real time with your 4 characters attacking consecutively with just one button. I'll cover this game in more detail in the near future because it's really complicated. All you need to know right now is that it's great, cheap on the PS4, going for 20 to 25 bucks nowadays. Number 1, Chaos Wars. Chaos Wars is a game I can't believe it's still cheap. I covered this game in this video from last year and I thought for sure over time its price will increase. It's an infamous crossover with characters from games like Shadow Hearts, Spectral Force and the Grow Lancer series, but the protagonists are high school students that get lost in this weird universe where those characters are appearing. So like in many crossovers, the goal is to find a way back home and help all of these guys return to theirs. I said it was infamous because it's very well known for having one of the absolute worst English dub in history. With no budget to hire voice actors, the localization team and their families voiced the characters and did an absolutely terrible job. But it's actually hilarious. Thankfully, you can just switch to the Japanese audio and you'll be fine. A strategy RPG, but you don't move on grids. There's a limited area for each character to move around and either attack by itself or stand by to execute combos with other characters. It's a combat similar to the one seen in the Spectral Force series. It makes sense because they have the same developers, Idea Factory, long before they joined up with Compile Heart. This is a really fun RPG and a great fanservice game, still exclusive to the PS2. It's hard to find in stores, but it shouldn't cost you more than 20 or 30 bucks even sealed on Amazon or eBay. This video was sponsored by my own books, available in both physical and digital formats in Amazon, link in the description. So those were some cheap RPG hidden gems I recommend, all of them around the $20 range. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!